02. In the matter of the request for agency action of Middle Fork Energy Uinta LLC for an order suspending Utah Administrative Code Rules R649-3-2, R649-3-10, and R649-3-11, paragraph 1 and 2. As to the KJ2 federal unit comprised of portions of townships 6 and 7 south, range 21 to 23 east, Salt Lake Meridian, Uinta County, Utah. My name is John Rogers, and I'm environmental manager at the Utah Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining, and I have been appointed by the Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining as the hearing examiner in this matter. We are holding this hearing virtually because of the restrictions of the COVID-19 pandemic. I wish to thank the division staff, legal counsel, petitioners, and the department technical staff for allowing this proceeding to go forth remotely. We now have completed several remote hearings, and the proceedings have worked very well. We now will take appearance of counsel this time. For Middle Fork,
Fred McDonald of counsel.
and for the division,
Haley Souza for the division.
okay. My counsel is Gordon Rowe of the Attorney General's office, and now we'll proceed to Mr. McDonald with his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. With me today virtually are Ms. Lindsay Dick and Mr. Rob Zabek, who will be the witnesses on behalf of Middle Fork, and I ask that they be sworn in right now.
Okay. Can we take care of that?
Sure. Will you both please raise your right hands? You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay.
Both were affirmative.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. The resumes of both witnesses were collectively submitted as Exhibit A in this matter. If separately asked, each would verify the contents of their respective resumes. Ms. Dick will be testifying as a fact witness only. Mr. Zabek has been previously recognized as an expert in petroleum engineering and cause number 187-12 in February of 2019 by the board. Based on that previous recognition in his resume, and presuming that the division has no objections, we ask that he be recognized as an expert in petroleum engineering for purposes of this cause as well.
Mr.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Because Mr. Zabek is being an expert at this time.
Okay. We'll recognize Mr. Zabek as the expert witness for this matter.
Thank you. I also want to confirm, Mr. Rogers, that you and counsel received the supplement to Exhibit Z on Monday, which was simply the updated return receipts of the mailing of the request.
I did.
Okay. Ms. Sousa, did you receive that as well?
Yes, we did. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Also, Mr. Rogers, I'll be moving for admission of the exhibits at the end of our presentation in chief, which is the normal procedure we follow in front of the board.
Okay, we'll do that at the end of this proceeding.
All right, thank you. As indicated, Middle Fork operates the KJ2 federal unit in Uinta County. There are no board orders currently relating to the unit. As such, the general operational rules, including the general operating rule at R649-3-2, have an as the testimony today will reflect, Middle Fork's unit plans are to drill wells from multi-well pads, require, however, directional drilling outside the limitations of Rule R649-3-2, and in the absence of regulatory relief, will require compliance with R649-310 and 11. As Mr. Rogers and the board are aware, Rule R649-2-3 allows the suspension of the general operational rules as to lands within a federal approved unit. The board has granted relief on several occasions, similar to what has been requested by Middle Fork. The most recent that I'm aware of is being in 2018 with respect to the Wolverine unit, which was cause number 269-03. A true and correct copy of Rule R649-2-3 was submitted as Exhibit B in this cause. As hopefully Mr. Rogers is aware and the board as well, units allow for the most efficient and economic manner of exploration and development because the unit operator can develop based on reservoir characteristics and not based on some arbitrary spacing or well siting pattern. Rule R649 2-3 recognizes this and allows for the suspension of existing board rules and orders within federal units so long as the conservation of oil and gas and the prevention of waste are accomplished thereby. The evidence today will show that the KJ2 unit agreement and operations conducted thereunder are intended to accomplish conservation of oil and gas and the prevention of waste. There are important caveats to Middle Fork's request. To protect correlative rights, Middle Fork agrees that no well may be drilled closer than 460 feet to a unit boundary or to an uncommitted unit tract without an exception location approved by the division or the board as necessary in accordance with Rule R649 3-3. Also, the requirement to provide a directional survey under Rule R649 3-11, paragraph 3, as to any directionally drilled well will remain in place. Jurisdiction over this matter is provided pursuant to Utah Code Annotated Section 40-6-5, subparagraph 3B, and Utah Administrative Code Rule R649 2-3. A copy of the request was sent via certified mail to all owners as regulatorily defined, both committed and uncommitted within the unit area, to the Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration, since state leases are committed to the unit, and to the Federal Bureau of Land Management, both the Utah State Office and the Vernal Field Offices, as there are federal leases in the unit and the BLM is the supervising agency over the unit. All of these were sent to the last addresses disclosed by the agency records and the Uinta County Realty records, as well as Middle Fork's internal records. Notice of the request and the hearing was also published in the Uinta Basin Standard and Vernal Express on June 2nd, 2020, and the Salt Lake Tribune and Deseret Morning News on June 7th, 2020. By board order entered on June 18th, 2020, and due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this matter was continued from the board's regularly scheduled June 24th hearing and instead referred to Mr. Rogers for virtual hearing today pursuant to Administrative Code Rule R641-113-100 and the executive order of Governor Herbert. No objections or responses were filed in response to the request for agency action, and the division has not submitted a staff memorandum in this cause. With that, I'll commence my examination of Ms. Dick. Ms. Dick, please state your name and business address for the record.
My name is Lindsay Dick, and my business address is 1515 Wine Coop Street, Suite 650, Denver, Colorado, 80202.
And what is your current position with Middle Fork?
I'm a land manager, and I supervise over all land matters, including the subject area and the land records relating thereto.
Okay, for the record, would you please state the corporate and bonding status of Middle Fork?
Yes. Middle Fork is a Delaware limited liability company in good standing with its principal place of business in Denver, Colorado. It is duly authorized to conduct business in Utah and is fully bonded with all appropriate federal and state agencies.
All right, Ms. Dick, I'm going to direct your attention to what has been marked as Exhibits C through E for purposes of this cause. Hopefully, I'm doing this correctly with the PowerPoint. Okay, is everybody can see the exhibit on the screens?
Yes.
Okay. Were these exhibits prepared by you or Middle Fork personnel with your input and review?
Yes, they were.
Okay, turning your attention to Exhibit C, which is on the PowerPoint right now, would you please explain to the hearing examiner and counsel what this represents?
Yes, this is the regional locator plat of the KJ2 unit. The KJ2 unit is located approximately 17 miles south of Vernal and approximately 1 mile east of the Horseshoe Bend of the Green River. The unit boundary is shown in red dashed line.
Okay, now turning your attention to Exhibit D, would you please explain to the hearing examiner and counsel what this represents?
Yes, so this is a plat of the current unit tract designations and lease identifications and boundaries. The unit is comprised of 15,335 acres as to depth below the top of the Wasatch Formation. The hash tracts are state tracts, approximately 13%, and all others are federal tracts, which is approximately 87%. Middle Fork is the current unit operator.
Can I interrupt? I'm sorry.
Sure,
Miss Dick, could you speak closer to your mic or?
I can. Yes, I'm so sorry. Yes, ma'am, I can.
Oh, that's much better.
Is that better? Okay, I apologize. Sorry, guys. Continuing, sorry, all tracts are fully or effectively committed to the unit except for tract number 4, which covers 280 acres in sections 7 and 8, township 7 south, range 22 east.
All right, just if I can stop you for a second, I'm
Sure.
trying to show by the arrow where that tract is located. Is that correct, where I'm pointing?
Go up, stop right there. Right there. That's it.
There, and then
yes.
this little 40 acres here too, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, please continue.
Okay. Middle Fork is the majority owner of the operating rights in all the unit leases except Tract 4. Kerr-McGee Oil and Gas Onshore LP owns 25% of the operating rights in this lease, covering unit tract number 4, but has not joined the unit, resulting in the tract's uncommitted status.
Okay, now I'm going to direct your attention to Exhibit E. The exhibit that was submitted in this matter is a full copy of the KJ2 unit agreement, but I'm going to highlight certain provisions of that, starting with the first page, which is a certification. Would you read the highlighted portion in yellow there?
Yes. So the BLM certifies and determines the unit is necessary and advisable in the public interest for the purpose of more properly conserving the natural resource.
Okay, and then the second page is a certification from the Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands. Again, would you read the highlighted section?
Yes. Sitlister certifies and determines that a unit is necessary and advisable in the trust interest for the conservation of natural resources.
Okay, then number paragraph 1 of the unit agreement itself, the highlighted portion, does that represent the same certification from the BLM certification about the that it's intended for the conserving the natural resources and in the public interest?
Yes. So it's yes, it does.
Okay. Then on number paragraph 8, paragraph 16 of the unit agreement addresses conservation. Would you please read that into the record as well?
I will. Operations hereunder and production of unitized substances shall be conducted to provide for the most economical and efficient recovery of said substances without waste, as defined by or pursuant to the state of Utah or federal law or regulation.
Okay, would you please confirm, will Middle Fork has it and will it continue to operate the unit under these governing principles?
Yes, we will.
Okay, will Middle Fork also maintain 460-foot set-offs from unit boundaries or uncommitted tracts, or as necessary, seek exception location approval from the division or the board?
Yes, we will.
And finally, would you, will Middle Fork provide directional surveys as required under Rule R649 3-11, paragraph 3?
Yes, we will.
Okay. Now I'm going to direct your attention to a pleading that was filed in this matter. You presumably have a copy in front of you. It's the certificate of mailing that was provided by my office, prepared and provided by my office.
Okay.
There's a number of parties listed there with addresses. Do you recognize those parties?
I do.
And who are they?
These owners are all the operating rights owners, both committed and uncommitted in the unit area, and the BLM and SITLA lessors under the leases. The BLM also administers the unit.
And how were these names and addresses determined?
They were determined, they were compiled from our internal land records, which include title opinions and a search of the BLM, SITLA's, and Uinta County records prior to filing the RAA.
All right. Mr. Rogers, Exhibit Z is supplemented were true and correct copies of return receipts received by my office of the mailing of the request for agency action and of inquiries made on the internet of the USPS as to the mailings for which we never received a return receipt on. It was supplemented on Monday to reflect the return receipts or the inquiries made after May 26, which was the filing deadline of the original Exhibit Z. With that, that concludes my examination of Ms. Dick.
Thank you.
Okay, would the division like to cross?
Yes, please. Ms. Dick, can you please speak to the uncommitted tract? Can you explain or describe why Kerr-McGee is not committed and what efforts that Middle Fork made to get Kerr-McGee to join the unit?
Yes, so this was prior to Middle Fork taking over, which was originally QEP. They're the ones that formed the unit, and there is proof of them sending the proper documentation to Kerr-McGee, and Kerr-McGee never committing to the unit.
So Middle Fork hasn't taken any additional actions to get Kerr-McGee to commit to the unit?
Not at this time, we have not.
And Ms. Dick, can you clarify, you stated that Middle Fork was committed to not placing a well closer than 460 feet from those uncommitted tracts. Can you verify that that 460 includes both the wellbore path and the productive interval?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Mr. McDonald, can you go back to Exhibit C?
Hang on a second.
So, Ms. Dick, this drawing of the KJ2 unit, when division staff and I were reviewing this yesterday, we noticed that it crosses the Midnight unit and the Walker Hollow unit. It looks like the Midnight unit is the one to the east and the Walker Hollow unit is the one to the west. The filing states that this area isn't under any other board orders. So can you please just describe the difference between what Middle Fork is seeking in this action and the target formations or the productive intervals in those other units?
Can I confirm with council for a second?
Sure, that'd
I
be
have
fine.
I have no objection.
All right, if we could take like a 2-minute break then.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'm back. So those two units, I am pretty sure, but I'd have to double check that they are shallower depth units. So they're above the Wasatch. I believe they're Green River, but again, I would have to double check on those.
I have another question. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Mystic, do you have an idea on how many wells Middleburg expects to put into this unit?
I believe at the moment we're looking at 2 to 4.
Okay.
There could be more. I mean, things change every day. So, yeah.
Can we, Mr. McDonald, can you scroll down to, I think it's Exhibit G, maybe? The one with it shows the well pad and then possible well locations.
We haven't gotten to that yet. That's going to be Mr. Zabek's testimony.
Okay, so I'll wait until Mr. Zabak gets there to ask. And then I believe that Mr. Doucette has some additional questions. I'm going to turn the time over to him.
Okay.
Yeah, Dustin Doucette for the division. Just a question on, I guess, what the unit status is, I guess. Is it in exploratory state? And so we'll have the ability to contract or expand going forward.
Yes, it is. It is.
So, and maybe this is more for Fred, I don't know. So does this request, is this going to expand with the unit or contract with the unit if that happens in the future?
Yes,
I
it
don't
would
think
be.
I saw any language in the request to that respect,
Well,
but I guess that's a question.
Yeah, typically that's the situation that we do it, and the order can certainly clarify that it would be, either applicable if it expands, or it would be not applicable if it contracts down. It's only applicable to the unit area, whatever that would be defined as.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Mr. Rogers, the division has no further questions.
Okay. I just want to get a clarification on Exhibit C, if we could go back to that. And there's no legend on this, so I'm assuming within the proposed unit here, the KJ unit, the white are the areas that are non-committed?
Yes.
Now, if we look over just above U45, there's another one, and there's another one just to the south where it says 1.2 miles. Are these unit parts that have not been committed, or is this just an older map that is not showing the update?
This is just an older map, and I believe that those are committed. One of those was leased later, which we got the paperwork and it's committed, but the only two that are not committed is over there on the west side, which is that track number 4, which we know that Kermagee owns 25% of that.
Okay.
So
I just want
about that. Yes, you're right.
I just want to clarify, make sure we weren't leaving any uncommitted tracks out of there. Okay.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McDonald?
Thank you. We'll commence with my examination of Mr. Zabek now. Mr. Zabek, would you please state your name and business address for the record?
Rob Zabek, 1515 Wine Coop, Suite 650, Denver, Colorado, 80202.
And what is your current position with Middle Fork?
I am Vice President of Development, and so reservoir engineering supervisor over development and all engineering activities in this area.
Okay, now I'm going to direct your attention to exhibits E through I, which have been marked in this cause. Were they prepared by you or Middle Fork personnel with your input and review?
Yes, they were.
Okay, I'm going to direct your attention now to exhibit E, which hopefully is shown on the PowerPoint now. Is everybody seeing that okay?
Yep.
Okay, would you please explain to the board what this represents?
Yeah, so this is a stratigraphic cross-section from Hedinger and Kirschbaum. Publication is referenced there below on the USGS. And this is showing the pertinent formations across our part of the Uinta Basin where this acreage is located over into the Piceance Basin. You can see our target intervals there are going down into the upper zone of the Blackhawk Formation which is lower shore face to upper shore face formation, interfingering with the marine section of the Blackhawk, and then going up into the Mesa Verde formation, where it's a fluvial dominated environment with braided meandering streams, amalgamated sands across there, and then up into the Wasatch formation. But our target formation is really that Tusher, Ferrer, Bucktongue, and Neslin formation.
Okay, let me clarify for the record. I misstated this as Exhibit E. This is Exhibit F. So I just want to make that sure that the record is clarified. This is Exhibit F. Okay, now turning your attention to Exhibit G, would you please explain to the hearing examiner council what this represents?
Yeah, so this is a type log in the unit offsetting our proposed well locations. You can see it there. I think Fred's going to point it out. Oop.
Here it is.
There we go. Just to the west of our proposed locations. In green, our proposed locations. We'll go over that in the next. But this type log is showing an actual log relative to that stratigraphic cross section we looked at earlier. In our target formations, you can see our target interval there. The perforations are highlighted in pink on where we typically perforate, and you can see just above the braided formation down through the Neslin are our target formations down into the top of the Sago within the Mesa Verde, and then down below the Blackhawk, there's 2 target formations within the Blackhawk interval. If we go to the
turning to what's been marked as Exhibit H, then would you please explain what this represents?
Yes. So here in pink, the lighter pink are existing legacy producers. So you can see there's 4 existing wells producing out of the Wasatch Mesa Verde formations within the unit. In pink on the east side of the unit are wells that are actually drilled in the red wash. The dark red wells are wells that were recently completed by Middle Fork last year within the red wash unit. And then the green wells are wells that we have permitted, with the 4 green wells and the KJ being the wells that we're discussing on the spacing hearing today.
Okay, now
go ahead. Sorry, the pad layout. So there, I know the question was asked earlier, how many wells do we plan on drilling within the unit? On 20-acre spacing, which is what this pad layout is. So we can reach up to 32 wells from a single pad location on that spacing. And the wells are oriented in this direction due to the stress orientation that I'll go over here shortly. Overall, within this unit on 20-acre spacing, we estimate you can get between 700 and 750 wells, depending on your surface locations.
Okay, now turning your attention to Exhibit I, which is a 2-page exhibit, starting with the first page. Would you please explain to the hearing examiner and council what this represents?
Yes, so this is a well that is further a little bit south of where we're at, or southeast of where we're at here, but this is referencing microseismic within the Mesa Verde formation. And so what you're looking at here on the left is going to be your depth track. So that's up and down the column, and you can see the dots within there. Those are referencing stages that were completed within the Mesa Verde formation. So you can see they completed 6 stages in this well, and those are microseismic events. And so those are going to be microfractures in the rock. Well, we're completing that. We had, you can see the well bore with the triangles is where the well was actually completed. And then to the right, you'll notice geophones, several dots on the well there. That is where the offset well was located in order to measure the microseismic event. And then each of one of those dots is going to be a microseismic event. So if you turn your attention to the aerial view, so that's going to be looking down on the well bore from the surface, and you can see the orientation of the events. We have a very high stress anisotropy in the basin, which causes our fractures to grow, 69 degrees north of west and along that azimuth. So that's our maximum horizontal stress. And you can see we get much wider half length growth. So our average length is 900 feet on this well, and with a width of only 200 feet. And so when we look at how we need to space our wells, we are draining a lot more along that east-west plane, or that northwest-southeast plane that our major stress orientation goes. And we don't see a lot of growth within our fracture interval north-south, hence why our wells are placed very tightly. We place our wells 330 foot on the 20-acre spacing north-south. You'd see here that's that's even outside of what we saw from the microseismic, and then we go much wider east-west due to this high stress anisotropy. So if you go to this slide here, you can see our borehole breakout. So on the left there is our spacing that I was referencing, 330 feet north-south. And that microseismic matches up with the orientation that we have here. So what you're looking at here is an FMI log with our borehole breakout. And you can see the maximum stress orientation there is in that 70 to 75 degrees north of west. Consistent
All right.
with the microseismic.
Okay, and I think you testified, but just if you could confirm again, the wells that you've drilled so far on the 20-acre density, have they proven economic?
Yes, very.
Okay. Again, just explain how you intend to drill these wells from one pad to a multi-well pad.
Yep. So we'll be drilling these from a single well pad, and a good reference is down there in the red wash unit. There's currently 10 wells on that pad that we drilled from a single well, and we drill those down. We kick off outside of our surface or outside of our conductor casing, kick off immediately with an S-curve well. And then when we get above our target formation, we drop vertical. So we're vertical through the entire producing zone of the formation. And this allows us to both minimize our surface use while optimizing our infrastructure, gathering facilities, and everything else. And so that reference pad there in red with the 10 wells is similar to what we're proposing doing here within the KJ unit.
And is there also some topographical restraints that it's easier to work from a multi-well pad than individual pads?
Yes, if you look, there's a huge valley going right through that middle, diagonally through section 8 and section 16 on the map there. And so you would not be able to reach those locations without doing the S-curve wells.
Okay, and just to confirm again, you said there was 4 existing wells. Were they drilled by Middle Fork or your predecessor in title?
Those were all drilled by predecessors.
Okay, and for the hearing examiner and counsel's reference, the request also requests the recognition that those wells will be deemed to be at legal locations, notwithstanding this relief. Mr. Zabek, then, in your expert opinion, will the suspension of the general well siting rules facilitate Middle Fork's plans to utilize multi-pad wells and S-curve directional drilling, all while maximizing recovery without waste?
Yes, sir.
And that the 20-acre well density is appropriate and economic?
Yes, sir.
And that the requested setbacks will minimize communication with uncommitted tracts and/or lands adjacent to the unit and therefore protect correlative rights?
Yes, sir.
That concludes my examination, Mr. Zabek.
Division?
Yes, I'm going to ask that Mr. Doucette be allowed to ask a couple questions.
That'll be fine.
Yeah, Dustin Doucette for the division again. If you could, actually this one you've got up here will probably work. This exhibit. The wells that were drilled already, the legacy producing wells, could you tell me if those penetrated the entire interval that you're asking basically to be the space, not the spaced interval, but the unit interval that you're going to be developing?
Yes, they all penetrated at least partially. 2 of the wells penetrated the entire interval, so down through the Blackhawk, and then 2 of them just penetrated the Mesa Verde, so they did not go to that Blackhawk formation.
And just as far as the production and maybe interference, have you encountered any interference between wells in either case, either the Mesa Verde or even down into the Blackhawk?
No, we have not seen. Just Dustin, for your reference, if you look at the well, the red well within the red wash unit, so about a mile away, we actually had microseismic and tracer on that red well, and we did not see any communication with those 2 wells and any of the existing wells to the south.
And just as far as what kind of timing have all those wells been on? So has there been time for maybe some communication? Obviously no initial communication, but has there been, what's the length of time they've been producing?
So the wells, the pink wells have been on for anywhere from 10 there's one that's only 2 years old, so 2 to 10 years. And then the dark red wells have been on for about 6 months. And we haven't seen any degradation in those older wells where we would have had a pressure sink, where we would expect to see an immediate impact from the frac hit or something to that effect. And we've not seen any communication there, nor within the wells that are all 4 years old and on the same pad.
And I guess this may be one final question. If for some reason you did see these things draining a lot more and maybe more than 460 feet, just to protect those uncommitted tracks, what would be your remedy to that?
Like to increase our setback from where we want to set back on each side of the unit there. If we're seeing that we're within a tighter spacing there, we'll spread our wells out further so that we're not losing, because it hurts the economic piece as well as the correlative rights, right?
Okay, thank you.
I have one more quick one, John.
Okay.
Can you describe the distance between that top gray dot and the uncommitted tract?
That one right now, I believe, is about 800 feet away.
Okay. That's my only question, Mr. Rogers.
Okay, thank you. I just want to confirm something. We kind of blazed through this microseismic information, but from it looks like that you feel the 460-foot setback from uncommitted tract or unit boundary, as you see it, is sufficient to protect correlative rights?
Yeah, so if we go, Brad, will you go back to the microseismic? You can see the half length there is 450 feet. So your average length is 900. So that's showing within that microseismic that we're right on that 450 foot half length. And it's consistent with also some previous spacing on where Anadarko's actually gone down to 10 acres and had the wells within that similar spacing down in Greater Natural Buttes.
Okay. Okay, anything
Can
else?
I ask another question really quick, John, just to follow up on that?
Sure, Dustin.
So just kind of off of that, I mean, off this microseismic, do you expect how much contribution from the matrix outside of these events are you expecting, you know, some drainage to occur? I mean, obviously, I'd expect you expect some, but how much effect do you think drainage through the matrix beyond these events will you be seeing? I mean, I think you testified you haven't had interference yet, but just maybe down the road, I'm looking at what you think your contribution would be.
Very minimal. So when we look at these, Dustin, from when I do rate transient analysis on this area, if we look at the half lengths that I actually use for the RTA work, they're smaller than the half lengths that you see from the microseismic. So even though we see events, our effective fracture length is actually going to be, our effective highly conductive fracture length is smaller than what we're seeing in the microseismic. And then that's where we get the matrix contribution. So outside of that, I would expect it to be very minimal. You know, when we're in that terminal decline phase, maybe you're talking 2 to 3% of your total production.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. McDonald, did you have any other?
No, that concludes our presentation in chief. Mr. Rogers, if it's appropriate, I'll move for admission of exhibits A through I inclusive and Z as supplemented.
Okay, we'll accept those as presented.
And other than, unless the division has other comments, I'll just reserve a conclusory statement at the end.
Okay. We'll now turn the time over to the division.
Mr. Rogers, can I take a couple minutes to just briefly confer with my client?
Sure, that'll be fine.
Thank you. I'm back. That was really quick conferring.
Oh, okay. I like that.
The division doesn't have anything to to add at this time.
Do you support this?
The division is in support, yes.
Okay, Fred, we'll go back to you for your conclusion.
Well, thank you. I think it's pretty straightforward matter. Certainly similar to numerous other units in the state where the board has granted this relief. I think the testimony shows that, again, the operations will be conducted in the interest of conservation without waste and protection of correlative rights. So again, thank everybody who's participating on the virtual hearing. We appreciate it and hope the request as submitted will be approved.
Okay. Just a couple things I'd like to state at this time. I'm concerned about the unit overlapping. It was assumed that these were upper stratigraphic units not involved in this, but is that something that we could address in the order as you research that and find out exactly what those units are producing and how they're set up?
Certainly we'll make sure of that, but I'm fairly certain that as Ms. Dick testified that those are shallower units. Otherwise the BLM would not approve overlapping units.
Okay, just want to double check on that.
Yep.
And then address the expansion and contraction, just as we talked about this, if it expands and contracts.
Certainly.
And Mr. Zabak talked about, from a question from Mr. Doucette, that if they found out the half-lakes were increasing, that they would change the setback, or at least take that into account for protection of correlative rights along those areas that are not committed or unit boundaries.
So is it you would want to see that in the order that Middle Fork would come back for a modification of this order when the setbacks, if it was shown that the half-links were?
Yeah, if we saw, he mentioned that if we saw that, it would be beneficial and economic to Middle Fork, but it'd be nice to get that approved. I mean, or just have that in the order.
Certainly.
Okay. Well, after listening to the evidence today has been presented, and due to the issues that this is environmentally, there'll be far fewer wells paths established, and there'll be a protection on environmental issues. The board has granted several reliefs in this matter in other cases, and for the efficient production and prevention of waste in this area, I support the request for agency action as written. Mr. McDonald, could you prepare that order?
Certainly.
Anything else from the division?
No, thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Okay. Okay, we'll conclude this as a matter and appreciate everyone participating, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.